Okay, let's try that again. For some reason, it didn't play the video. All right, so we got it to play that time, so that's good. All right, welcome to Paranormal Addicts podcast, season 2, episode 8. My guest today is Jack. So, Jack, we always start out with just introduce yourself to everybody, and then we will go from there.
Right. Well, I'm Jack Kenna. Been on a few different episodes of Haunted Case Files, Paranormal Survivor, my Paranormal Nightmare, all kinds of stuff. Anyways, I also written a couple books. My one book I use is Paranormal Research, Comprehensive Guide to Building a Strong Team, which I also use to teach my classes with here in New York. So I teach at a couple local colleges, just, non-credit courses, but matter of fact, we starting those up next week.
That's cool. I'm actually going to do a Paranormal 101 class on May the 3rd, because that's the National Paranormal Day. So I'm actually going. One of my sponsors is Eye Candy Rock Shop. It's the rock shop down here in Paducah, and I'm actually going to. They're actually going to host me there. So I'm kind of excited about that. So So like I said, we always start out with our icebreaker questions. The first icebreaker question is actually a 2-part question, Jack. And that is, what is your favorite location you investigated? And then what is your bucket list location that you want to investigate?
Favorite location, it's pretty much an easy one. We did, our team, Spirits of New England, did the USS Constitution for the Navy back in 2010. Yeah, we just spent 2 nights on there, had a lot of activity. And it was we did that before anybody else. The only other team I know that have done that since us was Ghost Hunters, and they had it on one of their episodes. And I always like to laugh about that because it was Joe Chin from Ghost Hunters International that saw our lecture and was talking to about us after, and then about a year later, Ghost Hunters was doing the show. Which is cool. They're all good guys, we always like to share information, but yeah, that was my favorite. I don't know if I have a bucket list place. I'm not one of I don't typically go to the normal places everybody goes to, like Rolling Hills and all that stuff. I would like to go over to probably both Scotland and Ireland to investigate. Not any specific location, but a good friend of mine, Rick McCullum, goes over there, and he does tours with another group over there. So I'd like to go with Rick, my buddy Rick McCullum. So if I had to investigate, I wouldn't care where it was, as long as I get to go with my buddy Rick McCullum.
Yeah, I used to say my bucket list location was Alcatraz, but you can't really go to Alcatraz,
Yeah.
But I mean, even if you take away the Alcatraz prison, there's so much history on that island. Yeah. So I thought that would be a good one. But other than that, I'm kind of like you. I don't really want to do all the touristy ones, that everybody does. I like to find, kind of the out of the way ones, and of course I like, I love it when we get to do a residential investigation where we can help a family. So yeah.
That's what we do a lot of anyway. That's what our main focus is. That's what we've always done. Residential cases. or like sometimes some businesses, or even what we've had a lot of is libraries out in Massachusetts have asked us to come and investigate their places. So, and some of them have hauntings going on, and some of them don't. But it's always interesting to do someplace nobody else has done. Yeah.
So
But I would like to do a
yeah,
medieval castle. I mean, I wouldn't care which one,
I would
just
love to
because
go
of
to
the
Scotland.
history.
I would love to go to Scotland and do some of the castles there.
Yeah.
For one reason, that's where my ancestors come from, is Scotland. So I think that would just be cool. And then, we were talking about how my day started out today, with my car blowing up. Well, my mechanic, when he came to look at it, now I'm going to go look at his house because his mother-in-law and his wife think it's got activity. So I was like,
Yeah.
hey, so yeah,
That's
you
how
never
it
know how
happens,
you're going to
right?
meet somebody.
Yeah, that's how it happens. You get talking to somebody, next thing you know, I got stuff going on in my house. They don't tell anybody else, but they'll tell us, right?
Yeah. He was like, do you think it's real? I was like, yeah. I was like, I've been doing it for 33 years. If it wasn't real, I think I would be doing something else.
That would be wasting my time.
And then he was like, do you have equipment? So I walked him back to my room and showed him my equipment. And, it's like like a quarter of my studio back is my equipment. He's like, yeah, you got a little bit of equipment. So yeah.
Yep.
So
we all got tons of it.
Next icebreaker question is, what is your favorite piece of equipment? And you can't say jack. We know that we're the best piece of equipment.
But that is it. But yeah.
So
actually, it's my favorite piece actually would be the audio recorder, because I still believe 90% of what you get is audio.
Yeah, you can't beat an audio recorder. I mean, that's the one piece of equipment I require when somebody joins my team. I require them to have an audio recorder. I'm like, don't go out and buy anything else. I'm like, until you find out you're going to like it. And I was like, but you got to have an audio recorder and a flashlight.
If you got one of these, you got both those things.
Exactly. And I tell
you got an audio recorder on it, it's got a flashlight on it, you're good to go.
Yeah. Some people try to say, oh, don't use your phone. I'm like, your phone is the best voice recorder you can get.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. They're very high definition. They're designed to be high definition, so that you can hear people well. Or movies and stuff like that. So the microphone and the audio coming out of it is really good, and they do have an audio recorder built into them. So you can use it for that. And like I said, you got a flashlight. You also got a camera.
Right.
You may just want to bring one of those extra chargers and just plug it right in, though, because you're gonna use a lot of it.
Well, you get arguments from people all the time about phone apps and phones and blah blah blah. My thing is, I don't personally use them, but I have friends that use this, and when they use it with me, we pretty well get the same evidence with my expensive stuff that they get with their phone. Now,
I mean, I use apps. I mean, there's certain apps I'll use, but I've tested them too for like there's one Ghost Radar app. I used that for 6 years before I ever started using it for evidence, and that was only because I kept comparing it to we get EVPs, we get this, and we get very similar information from it, or we get activity going on it at the same time we're getting activity captured on other things. So that's the only reason I started really using that. You just got to make sure you use it properly. It's got to be, your phone's got to be in airplane mode. You don't want to get it too close to other things, because still can set off a K2 and stuff like that. Right. So you just got to be careful using them. But they do work. They do work. Well, some of them anyway.
Yeah, they do. You can't use a phone as an EMF reader, but everything else,
right.
What people have to realize is your phone nowadays is basically just a mini computer. So long as it's programmed right, it definitely works. So and I'm like you, before I use any equipment, no matter whether it's on the phone or if I buy it, from Go Scare, no matter. And of course, our sponsor now is Portugal Gear. they're now all equipment sponsor. No
Mhm.
matter where I get it from, I test it for 6
Right.
investigations,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. You got it.
then I decide if it's worth putting in my toolbox.
Right.
So yeah,
Right. Right.
yeah,
Especially
because
if you're doing residential cases, you got to decide if it's going to really give you real evidence or not. So you got to know that before you start using it for that stuff. But you
yeah,
can use it on those investigations just to test it. Just don't report anything with it.
right.
Initially anyway.
Yeah, that's what I tell people all the time. I'm like, any equipment could be useful, but you have to know the positive, the negatives of it. You need to know
Right.
what false positive it gives. You
Yeah.
need to know you have to know the equipment, and then if you
Right.
know it, you can use it.
Right.
That's just like the SLS camera is the big thing. Right now, and every time you see it on TV, not every time, but a lot of
Yeah.
times when you see it on TV, you see him carrying it around. The
Yeah.
SLS is designed to be stationary. So if it's stationary, it can be useful. If you carry it around, it can pick up something that's not there. So you just have to know the equipment.
Yeah.
And but yeah.
Well, even I found with the SLS, you can carry it around, but you got to move very slowly with it.
Right. So
you gotta
stable.
be deliberate. You can't use it like you're using a camera. You got to
Right.
go much slower. You got to, if you do catch something on something, you've got to go back to it because it can give you false readings on things. So you just got to be careful it's like anything else. You got to be careful how you use it. I mean, I work in engineering, and a lot of this equipment we use was not designed for ghost hunting. Number one,
Right.
they're designed for other things, but as long as you know what they're designed for and how you can use them, they can work.
Yeah.
And that's what I talk about in some of my classes. I do a Paranormal 101 course that goes on for six classes and culminates in an investigation. So you just got to know, you got to know the equipment. You got to know what you can do with it. You got to know what it can do and what it was designed for, and potentially, it can give you evidence. Yeah. Not everything can. Not everything works like they say, but
I mean, you
like there's
I
I just want to say this. There's this SLS app that's out.
Yeah.
Don't use it unless you can hook up the actual SLS bar to it. The which was it's the one they designed for the SLS is basically just the thing they designed for the it's a Connect, right? So, and unless you can hook that up to it, and it does do that, then I wouldn't trust anything coming out of it because it's a camera trying to extrapolate something, and it doesn't really work well at all. I've used it. I've tried it. I've tested it. It doesn't. Just putting it on your phone and trying to use the phone to do it, forget it. Nah, it's no good.
I agree. I mean, so I have it's exactly like you said. What people have to realize is most of the equipment we have wasn't originally developed as paranormal investigation equipment. It had another purpose, and somebody smarter than me was like, "Hey, we can use that in the paranormal field." And that's how we got the SLS. It was originally a bad video game system, and somebody was like, "Hey, that would work." So I actually have the version 1.5. I don't know why it's 1.5 and not 2, but I have the 1.5. But,
right.
My team used to have the 1 when it first came out, and the 1 was too sensitive. I mean, it was picking up like piles of clothes. And and the 1.5 is a lot better. I used the 1.5. We went and investigated this hotel in Clay City, Kentucky, way on the other side of Kentucky, 5 hours from me. So this one room of the hotel, just one room, it has had 5 verified murders in this room. The last one, the body just the person just disappeared. They never found him. So they've always had activity, playing with the cameras, touching,
right.
Well, there's a husband and wife that own it. The wife didn't want anybody to come and look at it because she didn't want to be labeled as a paranormal location. Well, they decided to sell it. So the wife was like, told the husband, call somebody. Well, they contacted me for some reason. Well, there's teams closer, but that's okay. I enjoyed it. So we made the trip 5 hours, and we get there, and we set up our SLS. Well, the first thing that happened that I've never really had before is I'm not big on a cat bar just because I've never witnessed it actually doing anything. But at that location, we got in, and it's your normal hotel. It's got the long flat table,
Right.
chest of drawers. So I just decided to set the cat bars on there just to see. Something took one of the cat bars and rode just one of them and rode it all the way down to the thing.
Yeah.
And we asked it to do it. We asked it to do it again, and it said I can't. So then we looked into the history and come to find out before that was a hotel. They used to sell kids into slavery there.
Oh wow.
So we I'm kind of trying to make this a short story. Yeah, but obviously we investigated for like 8 hours. But
right.
We come to find out that we had kid spirits there. We had an evil, malicious, whatever you want to call it, spirit there.
Right.
Not demonic. He was just malicious. Because if you were a dickhead when you were alive, you're gonna be a dickhead when you're dead.
That's right.
So
that's right.
So
That's
we had a malicious, and then we had another spirit that was like he was special needs when he was alive, but he was trying to help the kids. So that's what we was dealing with. So we figured out the kids were the one that pushed the ball over, and they told us they couldn't. So we moved the cat boys onto the little dinette table. You get hotels, little table, 2 chairs. So we put them on there. We set up the SLS camera, and this was version 2, by the way, version 1.5. So we set it up, and we have voice recorder going, the Paratech, video camera, everything.
Right.
So we started doing. So again we asked, we're like, the ball's right there on the table. Can you just push it? It said, "I'll try." That's exactly what it said. And then on the SLS, you captured what looked like 2 kid-sized stick figures, and it looked like they were pushing the ball. You saw their arms going like this.
Yeah.
So you can't deny that. I mean,
that's good. Yeah, that's a good combination. That's a big thing. It's a combination of activity on different items that leads you to be able to figure out, okay, I probably am talking to a spirit here, right? Because it's never just one thing, right? It's I always like combinations of activity, right, on different pieces of equipment. So that's an amazing one. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, like you said, I love when I have confirmations. So my favorite traditional piece of equipment is I like my thermal camera, because with a thermal camera, you can't fake a thermal camera. You either capture something, you don't. So so I love that. Now, as far as the new technology, I really like my Paratech VM5. It's just another ITC, but I'm not big on the Ovilus for a couple reasons. One, I'm not paying $600 for anything.
I didn't pay that for my thermal.
The second thing with an Ovilus is, it's just a word bank. That's all it is. And I've never, and I mean, I know some people have good experience with it, and I'm not doubting. I'm not doubting their experience. I never doubt anybody's experience. I'll never take. But me personally, I don't like the Ovilus. I've also used the Parascript, a Paragear, and the first time I don't have one. I did a collaboration with another team, and their team lead had one, and that investigation, it was pretty good. Well, for my birthday this year, we went to the Monroe House in Indiana.
Oh, nice. Oh, cool.
Yeah. So that's the perfect place for my birthday. I mean, for other people, maybe not. For me, so
that's your spot. Yeah.
Yeah. So we had a trainee. He was a trainee now. We took him out of trainee status now. But he had bought the Parascript. Well, actually, he got it for a birthday present. But anyway, so he had the Periscript, and I had my Paratech. So we thought maybe they would compliment stuff.
Yeah.
Where the Periscript was just randomly saying things that wasn't nowhere near related to the investigation. So we just turned it off. But it's like I told him, you have to set that up. I'm like, I was like, bring it to another investigation, and I'll set it up for you. I'm like, I'm not taking time out of Moreau House to set it up for you. I was like, so yeah. So I mean, I've tested it. I've been using it for 2 years now.
Okay.
But I tested it a long time before I used it, and and then now I use it. When I use it, I also use the Apple Box, by Ghost Gear. Because Robert's a good friend of mine. So the only thing with the Apple Box, it's only yes, no. And some of my questions ain't yes, no. But so I like to use those two together.
Right.
I just have to remember to turn off the voice on the Apple Box, because if you forget about it, and you hear Dave Schroeder's voice at 3:00 in the morning, it kind of freaks you out.
Good point.
But I don't even call Dave anymore. I just call him the voice now.
The voice.
But I mean, I like using those two together because the best example I got, because I've only had the Apple Box since October, so I've only used it three investigations now.
Okay.
So going back to the Moreau House, so we're doing the Moreau House. It was great all night. Well, my birthday was actually January 19th. We started the investigation. We started the investigation on January 18th. So at midnight, when it actually became my birthday, I decided I was going to do a solo in the basement, because that's where the malicious spirit's supposed to be and all that stuff. So we get down there, and we set everything up. We got we got everything: video, voice recorder, Apple Box, Paratech, everything going. And I'm just doing my usual EVP work. And the way I investigate, I do everything respectfully. I respect the living, the dead, the property, everything. So I'm talking to the spirit just like I'm talking to you. We're just having a conversation.
Yep.
So the first thing I ask it if it passed away at the location, and it said, and the Apple Box went off yes.
Okay.
So I was like, okay. I was like, did you pass away in the house? Because at the Moreau House, that's an important destination, because they think maybe some people died on the property, some people died on the house. They don't really know. So that was my follow-up question. My follow-up question was, did you pass away in the house? It said yes. I was like, okay. I was like, thank you for that. I was like, so my next question is, how did you pass away? I was like, were you shot? Were you killed? Did you die by a gun? It said no. So I was like, okay. I was like, were you physically killed? Were you beat to death, hung, strangled? It said no again. So at this point, I'm a little bit confused, because so that's exactly what I said. I was like, okay. I was like, I'm a little bit confused right now. That's exactly what I said. So let me get this right. You died here. It said yes, but you didn't die by gun or violence. I said no. I was like, so could you tell me how you died?
Right.
And then the Apple Box, then the Paratech goes off and says fire.
Oh.
And say, I didn't mention fire. So that was, and the Moreau House actually burnt down 5 times.
Oh, okay. All right. So they died in one of those fires. Yeah.
So it's very probable. So that was another one of those wow moments. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, see, that's what they're trying to tell you anyways. They died in one of those fires, right? I mean, that was a response. How did you die? Fire. So, there's 5 fires, and so died in one of them. So whoever it is, which is a pretty bad way to go, actually. So,
So let's talk a little bit about you as an investigator before we get into all the things you've done. So how did you get into investigating, and what style of investigation do consider yourself? You consider yourself. Well, let's go with how you got into it first, and then we'll
Right.
go on
Right.
to the next
Well,
one.
I have. I was always curious. I mean, as a kid, I was like a lot of us. I was always curious about different shows that were on, watching like In Search of and all that stuff. But I got my mother was a I'll say sensitive, although she never would say that or anything like that. But she always knew when stuff was going to happen. And we would talk about her experiences when she was a kid and growing up, and because she had a lot of experiences growing up in her house, and she would talk about that. And I had experiences growing up in my own. I would hear somebody call my name; it would always sound like my mother, and I'd go looking for my mother, and she'd be like, "I'm not calling you." So I found out years later it was from a good psychic medium friend of mine that it was my grandmother, my mother's mother, that would call my name. Still does to this day. So I'm still in the house I grew up in. So I kind of got involved with it from that. And then when Ghost Hunters came out, I really took an interest in it again. I had an interest when I was a kid, and then kind of got out of it. And but when that came out, I got back into it, and I got involved with this. They used to have a chat room called the Beyond Reality chat room, and I met Ellen McNeil, who's the founder of Spirits of New England. I met her there and her team and her family and stuff, and I got together with them at one of the TAPS events, and next thing I know, I'm on their team. So that's how that all began, and I've been with them ever since. It was 2001, yeah, 2001. So, and then we got into investigating residential cases. So that was our big thing of wanting to, like Jason and Grant were doing, and their team wanted to do that, and actually they helped us quite a bit to do that, and yeah, we've been doing that ever since, and that's why our focus has always been residential cases. And then I got to a point where I decided I wanted to try to write a book, but I wanted to write it so that maybe I could teach with it someday, and that's when I wrote my paranormal research book. And then about 2 years after I wrote that, I put together a course called it's my Paranormal Research 101 course. And I went to my local college with it that I graduated from, Hudson Valley Community College. And I approached them about doing an evening course, and they thought it was a great idea. I didn't know how they were going to take it. So they thought it was a great idea. And we've been doing that ever since 2018, I think.
That's cool.
2018. So I've been doing that, and I've expanded it. My students kept bugging me for more, so I started an advanced class. Then they kept bugging me for more, so now I'm doing, as of last year, I started a psychic abilities course, which I'll be doing this spring too. So I've got 3 courses going so far, and they're bugging me for more. So, but we still do residential cases. I got my own team, Rensselaer Paranormal Research, which is a sister team of Spirits of New England. The funny thing is, all the team members came out of my classes I taught. So you get to pick the best, right?
Right.
So we built the team from there, and so we're doing a lot of residential cases, and so yeah, we're keeping busy with stuff. That's how I got into it. It was just seeing ghost hunters on TV and really taking an interest again, and meeting people online, talking to them.
Right.
Now I'm bringing people together through my classes. A lot of local people and stuff that they didn't know all these other people were interested in it. And we do get a full class pretty much every time. So I don't take more than 16 students per class. And my psychic abilities course is even less. I only take 10 for that. But yeah, they're all finding out they're all interested in this stuff. So they're all meeting each other, and they're putting together groups of their own now. So keep it going, right?
Yeah, the psychic abilities class is actually one that I'd probably be interested in, because that's how I got into it. Is I was born with nowadays I consider it a gift. At 4, 5, 6, I didn't particularly consider it a gift, but nowadays I definitely consider it a gift. Matter of fact, I tell people, when they try to play religious cards and all that stuff, I tell people, to me, the way I understand it is, my gift was given to me by God.
Yeah.
And this is the way he wants me to use it. So what's interesting is, as you know, a lot of the viewers know and stuff. I was born and raised not only in the Bible Belt, but like in the heartland of the Bible Belt, like in the heart. We have a church in every corner. So I didn't really get much nurturing growing up. When I was 13 or 14, me and my best friend decided that we were going to find out how to, what we needed to know. So we started checking out, this was in the, I hate to age me here, but this was in the late 80s, early 90s.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So we checked out books by the Warrens, we checked out everything we could, parapsychology and stuff. And like me and Tracy, when we were 14, we actually, when everybody else was going trick or treating or going to the haunted attraction, we actually spent the night in a legit haunted house. So that's when I first started, really learning how to, use my abilities and all that stuff. And I say I've been doing, the reason I say 33 years on how long I've been investigating, that's when I turned 18. And that's when I was actually able to, do it, So I've been doing a lot of the younger people like to call me the OG because I was like, be nice to me. I've been doing this longer than you've been alive. So let's talk about your investigation style. Do you consider yourself like old school investigator, scientific investigator, like a hybrid? Just what's your investigation style?
I'm more of a hybrid. I do a mixed bag. And it depends on the location. It depends on what's going on, what I'll use. Although I work, in the engineering field, sometimes I'll especially like with psychic ability stuff, I'll set all that equipment aside and I'll bring an audio recorder and then I'll just use my abilities that I have to try to figure out what's going on, maybe what might be in an area, if there is anything there. And that's kind of what you do when you do a walkthrough, right? Do a walkthrough location and just try to sense where is something not feeling right. That's the beginning, right? Where does things feel off? And that's not necessarily psychic abilities, but it's your senses, right? And that's where it starts anyways. But then you can start, if you have some abilities, you'll pick up on things. This is part of what I teach in the class, as well as spiritual protection. It's another thing I teach. But how to connect with those potential abilities you have. And so a lot of times during investigations, I focus on that before I'll bring in any of the equipment, right? And then you can use your equipment to decide where you want to set it up, how you want to use it. A lot of times I just stick to the cameras, audio recorders. Like I said, I might take in the SLS. I don't set up everything. I'll bring everything with me. So in case I need it, I got it. Or if I want to use it, I got it. But I don't go in and just set up all equipment.
See, I got all that.
Yeah. You got a lot of stuff, we all got a lot of stuff we bring. And
but you're right. It's stuff, like you said, we were given the ability for a reason, so we have to use it.
Yeah. Right. And you can use it to your advantage to try to maybe capture more activity or better activity. A lot of times if I'm asking a question, especially in residential cases, I'll just ask it in my head and see if you get a response, because how can something give you a response if it can't, nobody even hears it, right? So that makes getting activity or potential responses even more interesting, because you're only asking it in your head to whatever is there. And we believe they can pick up on that energy that you're emitting through thought. So people can see, well, how does that work? It's like, look, I don't know exactly how it works, but you're emitting energy through your thought, which if they are energy, they can pick up on. And in some cases, that seems to be the case. They can, and they'll give you an answer, So you get sometimes meditation. You sit and meditate in a location, see what comes to you. see if you have a vision, or see if you get a thought that comes through, and that helps you to kind of ask better questions too, right? So you can follow a train of thought, right? If you're thinking of a question, you ask something, you get a response on your device, you can now follow that train of thought. That's one thing I tell people: don't jump from thing to thing. Don't ask them, oh, do you enjoy trains? And you seem to be getting answers to that. Oh, yeah, they like trains. And then you go, oh, what was your favorite color? What? You just jumped the shark right there. You're like, you went from one topic that they seem to be interested in to something completely off the rails that now nothing happens. It's like, what did you think was going to happen? You stick to what you're asking them, All right, they like trains. Okay, well, did you work on the railroad? Were you this or that? Follow that train of thought, so to speak. But follow that, and you got to do that. And I think having some of these abilities and stuff helps you to do that, because you can sense things. You know what I'm saying? You can sometimes sense what maybe once you're getting into maybe contact, you can sense what they want to talk about. So it's kind of hard to explain to people, but you can pick up on maybe what they're thinking, right? Or what that energy is out there. So yeah, I do a mixed bag. I don't just focus, because one thing is never going to give you the answer. Just all one thing or all the other is never going to give you all the answers you need. So
yeah, so I'm kind of the same way. I consider my style, especially with when it's Ken 10 Paranormal, the whole team, we consider ourselves a hybrid style. Matter of fact, right. all the little catchphrases, we investigate with old school techniques and new school technology. So we combine them. Obviously we rely a lot on my abilities, especially like you said, especially when we do the initial walkthrough.
Yeah,
I just go. I don't take any equipment. So like my two team leads, they always go with me. Do the walkthrough, and Joe always brings the thermal camera, and and Dennis brings the EMF reader. So the millimeter is ready.
Yeah. I'll do that too. Yep, I'm bringing the EMF meter and audio recorder, EMF meter, pretty much it, and we'll just walk around and see what we get initially.
Yeah, and then I just let my abilities tell me what we need to set up, what I need to investigate.
Right.
And then to me, the fancy stuff is just to back up what I already feel. You know what I'm saying? Because especially if we're doing a residential case, because it's a lot easier to go to the homeowner and be like, "This is what I captured."
That's it. Yeah. You exactly. Got to. Homeowners wonder what's going on. So if you can have something to show them or audio to play back for them or something like that, that's helpful to them. It's also helpful to you to figure out what's really going on. So, but the homeowners always want to, well, what did you find out? So you've got that to show them, rather than just, because I know people who've had, before they came to us, they had a psychic come through and tell them all this stuff, and okay, where's the proof of that?
Right.
Did they do any research to show you that somebody died there? Well, no. All right. Well, I can make up not that they're making things up necessarily. They maybe really believe that, but for a homeowner, where's the proof?
Yep, exactly. Yeah, and see the psychics to do that, they're probably not legit. First of all, and second of all, they make it harder on the ones of us that actually have the abilities, because they make all of us look like we're faking stuff. And so I'm not saying they
some
are.
Of them aren't even faking, but they don't think about that part of it because they're not investigators; they're just psychics. So they don't think about the part of it that's like, well, you've got to prove that's or something similar to what you're saying happened there.
Right.
So that's actually part of what I teach in my paranormal my psychic abilities class. Part of what it is they go on an investigation with no equipment, by the way. They can use two things. They can have an audio recorder with them, and for half of the time depending on the location, they can use divining rods, but they can't use them all night. They can pick, because I have like 4 locations in this one big area that they can investigate, 4 different buildings, and they can use them for 2 of those locations. Other than that, they got to use their abilities in that audio recorder. And then the biggest thing is, I give them a week and a half off between that investigation and next class. Do your research and find out if what you came up with is correct. Can you prove to me? Can you prove to me that you felt somebody hung themselves in that building or something? Can you prove to me that happened? See, because I already know the answers to all this stuff of what happened there. I already know all the history and the research of it. So if they can come up with it, or if they can come up with something I didn't know about and show me the historical documents, because there's a lot on this place, by the way, too. So, and you can find it. You can go to the people who run it, and they'll give you a lot of information, of deaths and everything else there, and other things. Like one woman picked up on this. It was outside the building. Actually, she goes, "A fire took place here. I know a fire took place." I said, "Okay, we'll just prove it." She did her research after, found out that the spot she was standing on, there had been a barn that burned down. Okay. Good going. You connected with your abilities, and you were able to prove that you felt there had been a fire there and something burned. It was big, and it was a big fire. And you found it, because they didn't know it. They don't know anything about the place. I don't let them find out anything about the place. So yeah, good job. But that's the thing, right? You prove your abilities are correct.
Yeah, I mean,
then you can have more confidence. Number one, you can have more confidence in yourself. And I just started the class last year, but I had 2 psychics come to it, 2 known psychics come to it, and they were surprised. Like, what do you mean to do research? Yes, do research. And they did, and they proved their abilities were correct to themselves, not to me even necessarily, but they proved it to themselves. And they were surprised. Wait a minute, you're psychic. You're supposedly, yeah. But they were surprised they were actually correct, which says what about some psychics, right? They think they have these abilities, but until they prove it to themselves, they don't really know it for sure. Right. Which I think is hilarious.
Yeah,
I think it's funny.
I mean, if you have the ability, you have to nurture it. You have to learn how to use it, and
yes,
like you said,
and not everybody has the same abilities either. There's a bunch of different abilities.
Right.
Not everybody has the same ones,
Right.
And I have them do different things, different. I don't want to say tests, but we during the whole course, one of the things I do is I have something inside. I have a wooden box, and I have something inside the box. So after I teach some meditation techniques that I use, I have them go around each class for like we do like 10 classes. And I think for 6 of the classes, I pass that box around, and I have them just hold on to it and meditate on it and try to tell me what's in the box. And they journal at each class what they think is in it. And it was fun and interesting to watch how they start off with thinking one thing, and it slowly progresses. It's with some people, it slowly progresses to actually being able to draw what's inside the box before I ever open it and do the reveal at the very last class, and it was amazing. It is freaking amazing to watch that. And then some people can't get it at all, and they get a little despondent. I said, don't feel bad. I said, I can't do it either, to be honest with you, but I can't, I don't have that ability, so I said, don't feel bad, but we find out they have a different ability. And I said, that's the thing. This is what this class is about, trying to help you connect with your abilities and how to do that, and try to figure out what ability maybe you have. So, it's interesting to watch that class and see how it progresses. And we do a one where I hand in an item. I give them an item that they know nothing about and tell me what they get from it. Now I know what it is. It's a personal item from my family, so I know what it is, and I know who it is. I know who was connected to it directly. So I know all the information on it. So if they get it, it's like, wow, that's pretty incredible. Not everybody does, but some people are extremely accurate, and they know nothing about this item, or who it's connected to. So it's interesting to watch. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, they think the running theory on how I got my abilities is great my great grandmother was a great grandmother was a Cherokee medicine woman.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, so she had the ability. So and so my best example of using my abilities and then backing it up with finding out the history, and it was legit. We did a residential, and of course, I'm not going to go into too much detail because it was a residential, and
Right.
residential. We're there to help the people. We're not worried about
Right.
any of the other stuff. So, but anyway, we were there, and I felt that we were talking to like a teenager, and so we finally get going with the spirit box and the portal box and voice recorder. We start getting communication, it, uh, and he eventually told us his name. Or he told me his name, and he told me, and I asked him if he was. I asked him if he was a malicious spirit because the homeowners was afraid he was malicious.
Right.
And he told me his exact words was he wasn't malicious, he was mischievous. He was a 13-year-old boy.
Oh, okay.
So anyway, we keep going back and forth, and we're not getting any of this on the spirit box or anything else. This is just what he's telling me,
Right.
So I'm like, why did you cross over? And he said, and he told me his mom and his stepdad crossed over, but he was afraid of the light.
Oh, okay.
So I asked him how he passed, and he told me that he had drowned. His mom and his stepdad had drowned.
Okay.
And I thought it was significant that he said stepdad, because usually you say dad. Usually don't say stepdad. So anyway,
Right.
so it goes on for a while, and finally I asked him if he wants to go. I asked him if he wants to go, if he wanted to cross over and go back to his mom, and he said yes. I was like, you can cross over anytime you want to.
Yeah.
That's one thing. That's one thing people have to realize. Contrary to what you see on some TV shows,
Yeah.
spirits choose to be here. Sometimes subconsciously, but they choose to be here. They can cross over whenever they want to.
Right.
So,
that's right.
We don't cross them over. We can give them a hand. Help, but that's on them. So anyway. So I was like, so he was like, yes, he wanted to go. I was like, well, do you see a light? I was like, if you see the light, go there, and your mom will be waiting for you. So anyway, we got him to cross over. So we decided to validate what I was told. So we ended up. So we went to the library and put up archives and stuff, and we ended up finding a newspaper article from 1923 with the name the name was Jonathan. It had Jonathan in there, and it specifically said that Jonathan, his mom, and his stepdad had drowned in the stepdad's business.
Oh wow, yeah.
And so it all matched, and that's what you got to do.
Yeah.
You got to validate.
That's the point. If nothing else, do it for yourself, just to validate for yourself that what you're getting is correct. Don't just assume it is. I mean, I could go into any building and say anything, but unless I can prove it, it's just a story.
Right. Just an urban legend.
Yeah. I mean,
and that's what people. That's one thing that you have. The YouTubers, not all the YouTubers. There's some good ones out there, but the majority of the YouTubers, they're just spinning urban legends.
Yes.
They go to a school, and I don't care. Every school you've been to, you hear the same story. So and so committed. So and so hung themselves in the bathroom. Or, So you have to validate. There's so much urban legend. You have to know the facts. When I go into investigation, I don't like to research beforehand because I don't want to get in my head. So I go in blind, but then I research afterwards to validate. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And
that's right.
Then you got people. You got people like Sam and Kobe. That I wish I had the money, but really they're just the Spice Girls of the paranormal world. and stuff. So yeah, and on the same kick as on the YouTube, everybody wants to demon, because you get more likes. I probably got 100 more likes right there.
It's about entertainment, right? It's about making a show, right? So
right. And there is demonic experiences, but you're talking about less than 1%. I actually took demonology training for Bishop Long, so I'm not denying. I'm not denying. I'm just saying it's not every investigation.
No, it's definitely out there. I've had a few, so
and
usually they're oppressions. Usually it's an oppression that's going on. I've only ever seen and been involved with directly one possession case. That was it. But there is a lot of oppression cases out there, and they have to do with very specific things. So something that really bad that happened to that individual in their past, and I mean really bad stuff. So, and that opens you up to a lot of things, and you can end up with a demonic oppression because of that, and I've seen it. So but not everything's a possession. No, not everything's a demon either. And sometimes you can be oppressed by just a negative spirit. Like you said,
like I said,
they were an ass in life, and they're still an ass in death. They were an abuser or something.
A demonic case means they were never human.
Right. That's right.
That's right. So since we're talking about the YouTubers and stuff, let me just get this next question out, because I like to ask it to everybody, and it's especially appropriate to you because of the haunted hospitals and all that stuff. So how do you feel the parapop culture? That's my word, parapop culture. You like that word?
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah. How do you think the parapop culture has affected the paranormal field, both negatively and positively?
Well, I would say the negative side of it is what we were just kind of talking about. Everything's a demon, everything's this. And the problem is, they gate their audience towards teens to mid-20s. So these younger people believe all of it, and it's just not the truth. It's for entertainment, and people think it's real. And then the next thing I know, I got people calling me, I've got a demon in my house. I've got this, I've got that. And it's like, no, how much TV do you watch? Oh, I watch all those shows. Oh, yes, of course you do. Okay. Let's back you off of that for a second and talk about the real thing. And then the positive side to all of it is the fact that it has brought the paranormal into the mainstream. So it's opened it up for some of us, at least anyway, to try to do legitimate research and push for that more and offer classes, and that's why I offer my classes, to bring people like what it's really about, what really investigating is about. It's not what you see on TV. That's just, like I said, even like some of the shows I've been in, it's entertainment, right? Now, I've been lucky in that some of the shows I've done, 80%, like we tell our own stories, 80% of it's correct, right? Working with our house media at the time and stuff. 70-80% of it's correct. The rest was played up, right? We call the guy who used to play me Fake Jack, right? So, because he goes over the top, but that's okay. It's funny to watch, right? It's entertainment. So, but then you have shows that are just, everything's pretty much just for entertainment. The jump scares, where did that noise come from, and they're great. They get more careful about not saying it's paranormal, but they act like it is, right?
Right.
So I think on the newest YouTube shows is you see a lot of these ones that they used to be guys who would just go in and they were urban explorers, and then all of a sudden they started throwing the paranormal aspect into it. So now when they go in these broken down hole, you see this a lot from the UK, because it's legal in the UK to go into abandoned properties and stuff. So unlike here in the United States, so they go in these places and every noise is, oh my God, what was that? Oh, is it paranormal? Isn't paranormal? Oh, it's a ghost. It's this. It's a demon. It's blah blah. When it could be, you got abandoned homes. And some will say it could be rats, could be this, and they're right. Any animal could break into an abandoned home easy enough, right? Or the place is just falling apart, and you hear stuff falling in other rooms, and it's like, well, the place is falling apart anyway. So but that seems to be the new thing, right? Is all those shows. But so be careful. All I tell people is be careful watching that stuff. It's fun, it's entertaining, but don't go believing everything they're telling you, because I guarantee it's not true. So, I mean, there are some that are like that. They try to debunk everything. So, and then sometimes I watch them and they're trying to debunk too much. Like I sometimes you can tell they're having legit experiences and they're like, no, it can't be. No, it can't be. No, it's like, okay, boys, when are you going to admit that it is? Because it's like, it could be people in that house and they look all over the place. There's nobody around. There's nobody outside. Well, they could still be avoiding us. No, I doubt it. The place ain't that big. So, because they're almost afraid to admit that something's going on. So it's just, they're funny to watch, and but the positive side is it's brought all this more to the open. People can discuss it more. It used to be kind of like back in our day, right? It was taboo to kind of talk about any of that stuff. And now you can. So that's the positive side. Yeah, it's positive, negatives, everything, right? So
Right. Yeah, I definitely agree. Like you said, the positive is it makes it easier to talk about because, like I said earlier, being here in the heart of the Bible Belt with my abilities and everything, I used to get a whole lot of, oh, you must worship the devil and all this stuff. And so now I get, oh, you must worship the devil. Oh, you mean like ghost hunters. So, so at least I can talk about it more now.
Yeah.
And but it's like you said, some of the shows out there at least started out good. What people have to realize, like with Taps and Ghost Hunters, they're on location for like 3 days.
Yeah,
you see 45,
sometimes a week.
45 minutes. Yeah, you see 45 minutes. You see what the producers want you to see.
That's right.
So
that's right.
And I'm not even going to touch on Ghost Adventures and because
it's entertainment. It's entertainment. Okay?
Provoking spirits is wrong, but yeah, it's entertaining. It's like Sarah.
If you watch them over the years, even they don't really provoke anymore.
Yeah, right.
I think they've learned a lesson.
They've got a lot better. So Sarah pointed out to me when she was on the show. She said that what you have to remember is the people that tune in to see like Sam Kobe or any of those people.
Yeah,
they're tuning in to be entertained.
Yeah,
they're not the same people that's going to tune in to like me and you. They're not tuning in to see what an investigation is really like. They're just tuning in. So as much as they get on our nerves, sometimes they do serve a purpose.
They do, and you know what? It's okay. It's okay for people to do that stuff. They want to make a career out of that and make money off of it. That's fine. But people watching it just need to realize it's mostly entertainment, and it's a TV show like any other TV show, and it wouldn't be on if it wasn't getting ratings. Right. So they have to do things to get ratings to keep their audience. So to stay on TV to make their money, it's a job. All right, it's their job. They're entertainers. They're entertainers.
The love of money is the root of all evil.
It can be. Yeah, it can be. You can't love the money. You need it, but you don't have to fall in love with it. But the point is, they're doing their thing as a job to make money. Do they really believe in what they're doing? Some of them do. Some of them don't. Some do actual investigations. Some don't.
Like I
on
said,
the outside, I mean.
I'm not judging him. I'd like to have Sam Kobe's money.
No, I don't judge people. No.
Yeah. I mean,
because I ain't perfect either, so
that's not my job. The only issue I got with them is when they start making it harder for real investigators. Like, there's a couple of locations I've been to last year that now instead of just signing the normal little 1-page waiver, you have to sign a 2-page waiver that includes the fact that you won't release your video until they review it. And these 2 locations particularly told me it was because of Sam Kobe. Because they were there and they said it was demonic.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so they're like we don't allow anybody to release videos now until we review it because we don't want people running around saying we're demonic.
Yeah. Yeah. The only
So
problem they realistically have there is you can sign whatever, but if you're paying to go there, you own your own video.
yeah,
That's the truth. I mean, that's just the legal truth of it. If you're paying somebody to investigate a location, they can tell you can't do this and you can't do that, but you own your own video because you paid to go to that location. So it doesn't
that's true.
matter. It would never hold up in court because the judge would say, "Well, they paid you, didn't they?" Well, yeah, they can do what they want. You know, it's like going to a museum and you go in and not even that, but say you got a paid museum and you film everything in there. You paid to go in there. If it's you paid to go in there, you can post whatever you want. They can't stop you, because you paid. And a lot of these places, you pay good money to go to these places. It's not like you're paying
Right.
$5,
Yeah. Right. And
So,
on that point, I take care of my reputation and my team's reputation. We actually have a lawyer, and insurance, liability insurance.
yeah, I
So
carry insurance.
yeah. So because that's my reputation. I've been doing this for 33 years, and I got a good reputation. So yeah. So
yeah. Well, people like you and I aren't going to put anything out there that those people would have to worry about anyway. I know where they're coming from with, like you said, somebody goes in there and comes back, makes a video to put up on YouTube and declares it's all demonic and everything else. That's to get likes and get hits, and so they can get their YouTube channel up. But people like you and I, these places know if we went in there, we're not going to do anything like that anyway.
exactly.
Because it ruins our reputation. So we're not going to ruin our reputation just to make a video. At least I'm not, and you aren't. We're going to do that just to what? For what? A few likes on a channel? Get out of here. Get out of here.
Thank you, Wade.
Thanks,
You're
Wade.
the legend. So yeah, I mean, people ask me all the time, what's the difference between now and when I got into it? And to me, the biggest difference is when I got into it, everybody was about making the field better than it was when they got into it. They were about working together. They were about, finding evidence. And now it's took a turn. People are worried about their place in the field and, creating all this drama. I mean, I think it's slowly getting better, very slowly. But yeah, so that leads me to my next question, Jack. So as we all know, there has been quite a bit of drama lately in the field. Why do you?
When hasn't there? When hasn't there?
Why do you think
it has its peaks and valleys? Yes, but yeah.
Why do you think there's been? Why do you think there's been drama? And what do you think we need to do to fix it? Go back to the way it used to. Everybody was about the film.
The genie's been let out of the bottle. I don't think he can ever go back to the way it was. But it's always the drama. I mean, there was a lot of drama over the Conjuring house, and that's a whole nother thing, right? And that kind of played itself out, got closed down. So, and probably rightfully so. Especially if you're just throwing people out and not and then you're letting people still book, and then you're not allowing them to go there, and you're just taking their money. That's a problem. So I mean, but there's other drama going on too. There's always the reason it'll never go away is a lot of the drama comes between the people making these shows. Okay. So because those shows are always going to be around now, there's always going to be drama involved with it. And there's always going to be people who just want to get into this to make a buck and get on TV or get on YouTube. Well, it's now YouTube. TV's even going by the wayside, right? So let's just face it, the new media is this stuff, YouTube, the internet, that's why you don't see new paranormal shows coming out anymore on the networks. That's not where the focus is anymore. With the new generation and stuff, everything's online. So again, you're just always going to have drama because of these shows. You've got to now try to separate the show stuff from those of us doing real research. It's kind of no different than if you look in engineering, you see shows on like bridges and stuff like that, and how these bridges collapsed and everybody died and all this happened. Then you have the real stuff, or the real engineering going on today of these people trying to prevent those things from happening again, who are completely separate. So it's like it's diverging into two completely different things. You've got the entertainment side, and then you're going to have the actual research side, right? So, and the research side just has to focus on its own research side. Try to spread the information to the public, which I try to do through the classes and stuff. What is the paranormal really about? What's really going on? All that's TV stuff. A lot of that's entertainment. That's fine. You want to watch those shows, fine. But here's what real investigating is, which is why I include as part of all my classes an investigation. In the advanced class, it's 2 investigations. So they can see what they really need to do to try to make communication with things. What's it really like? What's really involved? And this is the real research. If you want to figure out, why did you have these experiences when you were a kid? Go this way. Stop watching those TV shows. Those TV shows ain't going to tell you anything, right? They're going to entertain you, but they're not going to give you the real answers for what you're looking for. And that's why a lot of people take my classes. They had experiences when they were younger, and they may still be having experiences. They want to understand it. And they're finding out I can't get anything from TV. I watch the shows and maybe hope that I could get an inkling of why I experienced what I experienced, but that's not what the shows do. So they take the class, and I give them insight into maybe why they really experienced what they did. So it's diverging into it's separating into 2 different things, and you got to focus on that. If you're into the real research and all that, stay away from all the other drama stuff. Stay away from it completely. Part of the reason part of the reason I really don't go to events and stuff anymore.
And then you got people, you'll get pigeonholed into being a celebrity that's really not, and for some reason, just like you said, some people think that they deserve a spot up here, and it's not about that. It's about, to me, it's about helping the new generation, making sure they're trained the right way. I don't care about my spot. I've been doing this 33 years. I don't consider myself anything besides a researcher. That's what I am.
Yeah.
And Aaron G. Thompson, he was a speaker at my Paracon last year, and he was on the podcast. Well, when he asked to be a speaker, I didn't really know who he was. And I was like, you got to be on the podcast. Well, then I started researching who he was and stuff. And but the outsiders know him because he was on 28 Days Haunted. Okay. Well, I had never seen 28 Days Haunted because I didn't care to. But since he was going to be on my show, I binge watched or the whole season of 28 Days Haunted.
So you get an idea who you're talking, who he is, who you're talking to, stuff.
So then he came on the show, and I started getting to know him like I'm getting to know you, and come to find out he's been investigating for like 25 years, and he's a legitimate investigator. He's not. So it's kind of sad that he's known for 28 Days Haunted. The drama and everything's got so bad. He's actually not even on social media. He left social media in December, and he's not coming back till September.
Yeah.
And it's sad people have
to use it now just to I don't even get on too much anymore. I talk about my classes. I announce when they're coming out, stuff like that. I don't, like I said, I've been on shows, yes. And I always looked at it this way. Even when I was on those shows, I got lucky. I had a good production company I was working with, and I told them from the start, look, I know what you need and all this, but I really want to try to get some information out there, to get some of the truth out there if I can. Okay. To inform people. So they worked with me, and I liked that. And actually, I'm doing something with them again. With Tom Adams, who's a producer I used to work with. He's got his own production company now, and they're looking for stories and stuff like that. So I'm finding them. Some people have stories, but because I know Tom, and I know at least he'll tell 80 to 90% of the story that's being told will be accurate, right? So it'll be those people's real experiences, what happened, and all that stuff. So, and if he disappoints me, I won't help him anymore.
Yeah, my team is actually,
but I know him, and they're going to do a good job, and all that. They're not even going to be doing reenactments this time, so they're going to do some other things. So I find it interesting. So I'm still kind of involved with that a little bit. Now I'll say this: being on those shows and stuff like that, yes, it gained me some notoriety and stuff to be able to do what I really wanted to do, But when you see me on those shows, I am who I am. I don't pretend to be something I'm not. I don't have a TV persona, right? Jack Kenna is who Jack Kenna is. This is who you get, man. So
yes. So this is a true story, Jack. So we put our investigations, not our residential, but our other investigations, we put on YouTube. So we got a new cameraman, a new video guy, and he was telling me, he's like, can't you, your knowledge and stuff and everything, your technique is great, but he's like, I need you to sell the stuff more. I'm like, I've been doing this for 33 years. I'm like, I'm not selling anything. I'm like, I'm not an entertainer. I'm a researcher. I'm like, so yeah. And the interesting thing is, we're actually going to, my team, Ken 10 Paranormal, we're actually going to be doing 2 episodes on a streaming show.
Yeah.
And I wasn't going to do it because there's so much fake out there, so much,
yeah.
So I wasn't going to do it. I mean, it's a good opportunity, and everything. But I was like, I don't want to be labeled as that. So I talked to some other people I know, and I finally came to the decision that we are going to do it because there is so much fake out there. It'd be good to get some real out there.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, I've got an idea. I've been kicking around. I did my last podcast quite a while ago, maybe a couple of years ago now. But it used to be just a Q&A, and Carly Hall and I used to do it, and I felt it ran its course because we started getting a lot of the same. I used to let the audience ask the questions and stuff, and we'd have guests and stuff like that, but we would just ask them about their techniques and stuff, and let them ask us questions and stuff. It was a little bit different, but it felt it ran its course because we started getting the same questions over and over again, and it's like we've kind of done that. We've covered that, so. That's kind of why I ended it, but I've been thinking about a new idea for a new podcast lately. So, something a little bit different. It will involve investigation, but that's only a portion of it. That won't be the main portion of it, realistically. So I don't want to say too much, but I'm kicking it around, and if it's going to start off, it'll be within the next 3 months, only because we'll have to do some filming and stuff first, and it'll be 3 months before we could probably get several episodes put together to put it out there. So, because I don't want to just start and then be behind the 8 ball to do another week and another week. You gotta build stuff up, right? So you've got some leeway in between in case you have some downtime. So I'm working on something anyway, or the idea anyway, which I pretty much got it sorted out now. So it's hard to do all that stuff, plus teach, plus do my regular job, plus this stuff, it gets you run out of time eventually, Then I've got my whole collection behind me, of which I'm still in the process of. I just bought a whole bunch of stuff, and I've got to rearrange the whole room again. So I'm in the process of that too. I'm a big toy collector, so science fiction mostly. So
I try to balance, the event planning thing I do and the podcast and actually investigate with my team. And I got 3 teenagers, and so so anyway,
I got grandkids now, so
we're at 1:15. So I got 2 what I call them lightning rounds. So let's try to get those in, and then we'll get off here. So the first lightning round we have is we're going to discuss the different kinds of activity, different kinds of haunting, and I tend to use, Jack, and I'm sure you've noticed it in our conversation. I don't ever really call anything haunted because there's just a negative vibe with that. So I use the term active. That's the term I use.
Fair enough.
Not that I think everybody should use my term.
I think I'm better. It's a good term to use. It's a good term to use.
So the first kind of activity that we're going to talk about is a residual haunting. What's your take on a residual haunting?
Well, residual haunting is just there's no spirit involved there, right? It's just energy that's trapped in a location, whether it's trapped in the wood, in my home, in the rocks around the property, in the water, even anything. But it's something that it kind of records, traps that energy. It's kind of like recording, and it'll play over and over and over again. I always tell people at my own house, sometimes when I'm dead and gone, people are going to hear somebody going up and down the stairs constantly, because I do up and down the stairs constantly from my bedroom down to the downstairs. So somebody moves in here at some point, they're going to hear that. Plus, I had 7 kids at one time going up and down those stairs constantly. I'm sure that energy is trapped there. Yeah. So whoever buys my house when I'm gone, it's all residual. Don't worry about it. It's not on it. Well, it's only active with residual activity. So don't worry about it.
We laugh, but my best experience with the residual, because like you said, it's like a glitch in the matrix. A videotape we have this location here in Paducah, Kentucky, that I've actually investigated a dozen times. It's known to be active. It was the African American hotel during segregation.
Oh, okay.
Of course, they didn't say African American.
No, I know.
I'm trying to be politically correct. So I don't want to get a censor on my show. So it was African. So one of the famous spirits there, and I mean everybody stayed here. The Highland Globetrotters, Chuck Berry, the Negro League baseball players, everybody. But one of the famous spirits, if that's the term you want to use, is famous. She was the owner, and at 11:01, she walks down the staircase. That's all she does is walk down the staircase. Well, she has an interesting backstory, because she wanted to open this hotel while her husband was alive, but he would never go for it. So when her husband died, she opened the hotel in his name, because black women didn't own businesses that way. So I mean,
right.
So I mean, she has an interesting history. So anyway, like I said, I've investigated this location a dozen times, like legitimately. We used to do it every year on the third Saturday of September, because it's National Ghost Hunting Day. So we actually used to do a public investigation there on that day. So anyway, not the last time I did it, but the time before last, we were actually collaborating with a film crew from Belmont University in Nashville. So they were there with us, and that was an interesting experience, both good and bad. It will be the last time I actually try to conduct a serious investigation with people that are just novice investigators. Because I mean they were college kids. They just started dancing in the middle of the investigation. I'm like, come on. So anyway, so every time I've investigated the Metropolitan, every time I've investigated, I make everybody stop and come down to the end of the staircase at 10:40, so we could sit up and try to catch, the residual. So we did that as always, and for some reason that night with the ladies from Belmont there, we actually captured. We looked like the apparition walking down the staircase. It even moved the curtains.
Wow. Okay.
But that's but yeah, so that's a residual.
Yes.
It's just
because it says happens over and over and over and over again.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that happens typically. Yeah.
Yeah. So they used to say, the common opinion used to be residual was the most common kind of haunting, but I had a guest last season that made the point that maybe actually intelligent hauntings are the most common because, first of all, with intelligent, we're actually corresponding with them,
right?
So we know they're actually there. With the residual, it could be just anything,
right?
So anyway, I've been investigating with that theory anyway. So anyway, that's my leadway, Jack. It may not have been a very good leadway, but that's my leadway. we're going to talk about intelligent hauntings now.
All right. Okay. Good job. Intelligent. Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Okay. What do you want to talk about with those?
Yeah. So
I think you may be right. I think your buddy may be right too. I think they may be more common than residual hauntings. Yeah. Based on my own experience.
Yeah, I mean, there's not really much to say about intelligent. They're there. We correspond with them. Hopefully they're usually, nice spirits. Just make sure we treat with respect. Because I gotta tell people, you have to remember, if you really think about it, we're really trespassing on their place. They were there before we were, so we have to do it respectively. So
that's right. That's right. And I always ask people. Here's one thing I ask people. I said, "What do you?" Especially my first day in class. What do you think a ghost is? Somebody tell me what a ghost is. Because they go, well, it's a intelligent haunting. Okay, but what is it? And I always get the blank look. I said, "Do you believe you have a soul?" Oh yeah. That's what you're talking to, a human soul. It's like that's it. That's what you're dealing with. I mean, there's other things out there too, but majority of what you're dealing with is a human soul. It may not be a nice person, but you're talking about your soul. You're talking to a person who you are. This, right, is not who we are, right? Our soul, who we are, is who we are. And that's what you're talking to. So be respectful of it.
Exactly.
Talk to it just like you would anybody else.
Yep, exactly. So our next kind of spirit is a malicious spirit. And like we said earlier, malicious is not demonic. Malicious was probably somebody that was just a dickhead when they were alive. So now they're a dickhead now. So
yeah. Or it's also possible they can seem malicious and they're desperate.
Right.
Desperate for contact, desperate to get something across, which can come across as malicious, right? Because they're desperate. They can scratch you, they can bruise you, they can cause all kinds of crazy activity, right? So but they're not demons. No, they're not demons. Something completely different. They're still a human soul.
Right. I think like you said, like the scratching stuff is important because we usually take that being malicious, but like you said, it could not be. An example I like to use is like if you're in like an asylum, what you have to realize a lot of time in the asylum, that could have been a kid that was blind and deaf, and that's the only way they had to communicate with you.
Right. I always tell people think of it as a drowning person. They're desperate to get saved. You go out to save them, they may try to take you down with them. Because they're panicking, right? They're just they're in panic mode. So they're just kind of grabbing whatever and anything to try to stay above water. And that's you. You got to be careful. So you got to be careful how you approach them, right?
Right. Yeah, that's what I was about to say. They could be being malicious because of the way they were approached. They may think that you're invading on their place. So there's lots of reasons. So the next one is kind of along the same line, but how about poltergeist activity?
That's an interesting one because that may or may not be a spirit. First of
Right,
all, it may or may not
right,
be. It can be the energy of a living person who doesn't know they're actually moving things,
right.
or causing problems, which they can even do it when they're not there, by the way, just because of the energy they leave behind. I had a case like that with some people who are friends of ours, and the one daughter was causing all this activity because of some anxiety and stress she was going through. And funny thing is, she still causes it to this day. She's got kids of her own now, but she can still cause activity in her own home. Because she'll
Right.
call me every once in a while. She goes, "I think I got something going on." I said, "Yeah, remember? Oh, yeah. Are you going through a tough time, right? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I am going to see a counselor right now because I got a lot of anxiety. Yeah, yeah. That's probably what's going on." And then when she starts to feel better and stuff, it goes away. So that's a very, very typical. I mean, that's one particular case where we figured out what was going on. It was the girl, now the woman, causes it. And it's just
So,
her amount of energy she has, and
right.
that the energy gets chaotic. Sometimes it's a spirit, sometimes it can be something demonic. That's one that's more open, and you can't always tell what's really. You got to figure it out. You got to figure out what's causing it. Yeah, and it takes time. People think they can go in and do one investigation and figure out everything that's going on in one investigation. No, you can't. No, you can't. It takes time. Sometimes months, sometimes a year or more to figure out what's real, especially in cases of actual demonic cases. Those could take a year or more to figure out, right? Because there's so much involved. Now, that's not every day, because you're not going there every day, but it can be, you're going twice a month for a year to figure out what's really happening to those people. So,
So that was a good leeway there, Jack, because our last kind of activity is demonic.
yeah.
So, just like you just said, and like we said earlier, there is demonic cases out there, but what everybody has to realize is if it's demonic, that means it was never human.
That's right.
You know,
Yeah, demonics are
and,
inhuman spirits. Yes.
and demonic cases, everybody tries to make into Christian, Catholic, but actually demonic goes back to Native American and Egyptian. So
Yeah, it goes way, way, way back.
yeah,
They just
yeah.
call them different things, but yeah, you got the jinn, which can be good and bad. Yeah.
Yeah. So
So
yeah,
yeah, this stuff goes way, way, way back. Yeah.
right. So let's transition into our next speed round. We're going to talk about different kinds of locations we can investigate and
Right.
get your take on them. And so, like for purposes of this round, like a hospital and asylum are two separate things. So
Yes. Yes, they are. Yes.
yeah. So and like a jail and a prison are two different things. So
Right.
all right. So let's get started. Let's start out with cemeteries. What's your take on investigating a cemetery?
I never do it unless it turns out to connect to a case, and I've only had that happen a couple times, where the case led me to the cemetery. And the connection there, but I don't investigate cemeteries. I don't care to. Sometimes I have been, on some events that involve cemeteries. I have run into something negative around a cemetery during an event like that. I actually caught something on camera that was on one of the shows. I think it was on Haunted Case Files. But that's rare. But I don't go to cemeteries to investigate. Not like when I was a kid and you did it on Halloween.
Yeah.
Because that's what we all did.
So
A lot of us did anyway. But no,
so
I don't investigate them.
before I give my take on it, so Christina said here that she has a theory that demons are just spirits of people that are assholes alive. That would be a malicious spirit, because like we said, if you were a dickhead in life, you're going to be a dickhead as a spirit.
That's
To be demonic by definition, by definition, demonic is non-human.
That's correct.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
So a malicious spirit is exactly what you just said. They were asshole when they were alive. They're going to be asshole when they're dead. The best one, my best example. We went to this location, Anderson Hotel is what it's called. It's a transit hotel. I hate calling it hotel because when you say hotel, everybody thinks like Hilton and stuff. It was a transit hotel, and one of the known spirits there. He lived there, and he was an alcoholic who drunk himself to death, and then he hung himself in the closet. Well, while he was alive, he was just a dickhead. He ran prostitutes out of there, all those stuff. And when we dealt with him, he actually he actually grabbed one of my team members by her lady area and pushed another one down. So I mean, that's a malicious spirit. He was a dickhead. So this Damien says, what do you say when a demon is in fact first human consciousness with wild man mentality? Why do we not? So people try to throw out that dinosaur ghost question all the time. There's actually Yellowstone actually claims that they may have a dinosaur ghost. But
I would think it would be probably residual, but yeah.
So any animal spirit would be residual, because they don't really have a conscience or a soul. So but anyway, so back to the demon thing. Demon by definition to be considered a demon, it has to be non-human. Otherwise, otherwise it's malicious or elemental. It can't.
And demons have very specific agendas as well. True demonics have very specific agendas. It wouldn't be a wild man mentality where people are being scratched and stuff like that, or things being thrown around. Actually, demonic cases are very quiet. If you go to investigate one, you'd think there was nothing going on because they don't want you there.
Christina said that
people don't realize that. You got to stop thinking with the TV mentality, people.
So back to cemeteries. So
yes,
I actually pretty well have the same opinion theory that you do. I'm not a big cemetery person. I won't go. I don't do a cemetery unless I'm specifically asked to, and then I only investigate that. There's exceptions. Like we have a cemetery down here that used to be, before it was a cemetery, it was a Civil War basic training camp.
Oh,
interesting. So we're investigating it, but I'm not a big cemetery person. I don't judge anybody else. If you want to go to a cemetery, that's fine. But my theory is they didn't live at the cemetery. They didn't die at the cemetery. So why would they still be there?
I'm not going to hunt. I'm not going to hunt my grave. I'll tell you
that. So let's talk about schools. What do you feel about it in schools?
Oh, investigating schools? I've never investigated one. So I don't know if I really have much I can say on that, except that if I was asked to, I would. It's like anything else. Somebody tells you they think this is going on, that's going on. You go in, you investigate, you see what you get. If you get something, you've got to do the research to see if it adds up to what the stories are. I mean, because like I said, there's always like stories like, oh, young girl was killed by the maintenance guy in the basement. Okay, she haunts the basement, right? Well, where's the proof? All right, where's if that happened, there's a police report. Okay, so let's try to see if we can find that and see if it's real. And usually you can't, which tells me that's just an urban legend that never happened. Could there be activity in it? Yeah. I mean, and the activity could have nothing to do with the school itself. Could have to do with the property that school was built on. So I mean, there's things like that. What was there before the school? It's all this stuff you got to go in and figure out. But yeah, if you're asked to go in, I wouldn't just go in and investigate a school and sneak in and do that. No, if you're asked to do it, or if you ask permission and you're given permission, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I've only school I've ever investigated had been a school for many, many years. It was abandoned, and it was the African American school in rural Kentucky. So I mean, so it, and we got some decent stuff there. I would like to investigate my old high school because my old high school was the site of a school shooting.
Oh, yeah.
Uh, it was the first, not the first school shooting, but the first one of the recent one. It predated Columbine. It was
Oh,
right
okay.
before Columbine.
All
So
right.
Heath High School. I went to Heath High School, and so I would like to investigate it. It's no longer a high school; it's now a middle school. But
Okay.
I would like to investigate it. Other than that, like you said, you'd have to know the actual stories because, like we discussed earlier, every school you go to has a story about so and so hanging themselves in the basement.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah. All right. So let's talk about how about hospitals.
I've investigated a couple different ones that are, they're closed, but they were reopened for investigation sites. One was down in South Pittsburgh Hospital. So very haunted location, by the way. Interesting site. All the original stories that came out with it were just BS in order to get people to go and investigate it. Because it was like, oh, one doctor was doing experiments on people and stuff like. None of that ever happened. All right. There is a doctor that will show up on the elevator sometimes. Interesting. It's because he'd make rounds, and I think it's residual. It's one of those things where he made rounds every night, and he'd always go from floor to floor. So he was always going up and down on the elevator all night long, every night. So, I think that's residual. There is something else somewhat negative there. I've run into it. I've had stuff thrown at me by it. So what is it? I don't know. I never did. I've investigated enough times to figure out what exactly it was, but it actually could be something that's elemental, actually, spirit connected to the land there. So, yeah, if you get a chance, and hospitals can be very interesting places to investigate because a lot of people do die in them. It's natural, and some
People were
spirits.
born in it.
Yeah, some people were born in it. Yeah, a lot of people
So they
born in
saw
them. Every
they
hospital has
saw
people
both.
that both are born and die. There's a lot of energy in hospitals, is what it comes down to,
Yeah.
and they can be very interesting places to investigate. But always
So
be respectful.
we actually we have an abandoned hospital that we use to train people because like my team's a large team. We have 15 people. So
Yeah.
we have this abandoned hospital that we in the what's important to know, it's been abandoned since 1988. So I
Okay.
mean it's completely gutted and everything. So I've got the best thermal evidence I've ever got there.
Mm.
Uh, uh, yeah. So yeah, and then like I would, I I'd probably never investigate an operating hospital. First of all, they wouldn't let you, and second of all, out of respect to people. But my father-in-law, who is a skeptic. Matter of fact, he's a Southern Baptist pastor, so he's like the biggest skeptic there is. He was in the hospital. He was in the hospital for some surgery, and he messaged me at like 10 o'clock at night. He's like, "Kent, you need to come up here and investigate my room." He's like, "I got a ghost." So yeah, so there's lots of energy. So let's answer Damien's question here. He's going back to the school thing. He asked, would a school ghost take on the childish persona or an age group school tort?
I know what he means by that. Yeah.
I guess it would depend on what the spirit was, if he was a student or if he was a teacher.
Right. That's exactly it. I mean, yeah. Were they a student when they died? There's also a possibility that, because I've had this in our own school. We had somebody who graduated, came back as a teacher later on, taught in the same school. But they also went to that school. So if they died, if that place was important to them, they don't necessarily have to even die in the school. Spirits can just go to a place that was very important to them. They don't have to have died there necessarily. But would she come back as a student, or would she come back as a teacher? Or could she manifest as both from time to time? That's another possibility. We don't really know for sure. I mean, so when I die, I'll let you know. I'll let you know. I'll come back and tell you.
So speaking of that,
I mean, it's possible. It's possible they could.
Well, when I die, I'm going to have K2 meters on all the chairs at my funeral, and then my son is going to take my phone and text everybody and say thanks for coming.
Yeah. I always said that too. Like when I know I'm gonna be going, like sometimes you can know. Like my sister knew.
So Damien
I
says
told her,
that
I
he
said,
draws.
Shelly, I said, just in case, why don't you send out a message? Have it go out tomorrow. We joked about it. I was trying to make her laugh because it was the end. She knew it. And I was just trying to make her laugh. She thought about it. She goes, "Nah, I better not."
So Damien says
it's a great place to be up here. Why don't you guys come join me? That's what I told her to put.
Damien says he's drawing a connection through memory where they died and where the body is. And I mean, it's like we discussed earlier, spirits subconsciously or consciously, they choose to still be here. So they're usually going to be somewhere that they found peace at.
Right. Most choose. There is some who are confused. I've run into that, and they're not sure what happened to them. They're not sure they're dead. That's a weird one when you got to break that to them.
Right. I had one that was a wreck. It was a wreck. So we actually got a friend of mine is the chief deputy sheriff, the under sheriff. I guess that's the technical term. So he asked us to come check out this thing. He's like, people claim that there's. He's like, so he knew us, so we went out there and checked that. And once again, I'm going to make a long investigation into a minute-long conversation. But anyway, what we determined was there was two spirits there. One was what happened. The backstory was there was a wreck. Boyfriend and girlfriend, high school, going to prom. Got killed. They both. So both the spirits were still there. The female was still there because she was waiting to cross over with her boyfriend.
Oh,
when we tracked down her boyfriend, he told her his exact words was, he's like, I appreciate her waiting for me, but he's like, that's not going to happen because I'm not going to heaven. I'm going to hell. That's why I'm still here.
Yeah. So, hopefully he doesn't, but
that was an interesting case.
Waiting around for me anyway. It's like, go.
Yeah,
I'll
right.
catch up with you later.
So, okay, next location we're going to talk about is, and some people think this one's kind of strange, but that's okay. How about a church?
I've investigated a few churches, that are no longer active. I can tell you that negative things move into churches that close down. It's almost like they're waiting, to go in and defile it. So, because they're kind of creepy, to be honest. Going to investigate an old, like, closed down church can be a very creepy thing. It's just the energy that's there. Yeah, because one thing that happens when they close down churches is they desanctify them, so it just becomes a building again.
Right.
So it's amazing what seems to be waiting to move in. It's very strange.
Yeah. So what was really interesting is the school that I mentioned earlier that used to be the African American school. After the school shut down, it became a church.
Oh.
And then the church got shut down.
Yeah.
So it was so churches are interesting because, like you said, once they're shut down, they're desanctified. So then you have all kinds of spirits there. And then if it's like an active church, you know, I found lots of activity there, and my theory to that is because that's a safe place for them. That's a place where maybe they were looking for spiritual answers, so that's why they were there.
Yeah, that can be the case too. I mean, there could be a mixed bag there, but if you have a chance to investigate one, yeah, go ahead and do it. You'll never get an offer to investigate one that's active, though. I mean, that's currently a church, though.
Well, we got to investigate.
No priest, minister, or whatever is going to ask you to come in to investigate their church. Ain't going to happen. So
okay, so let's talk about prisons. Have you ever?
I have investigated prisons. It's a Salem, New York prison here. Very active location. Some of it's like there's three inmates that committed suicide in the prison. There's also a pedophile section, or pedophile section, however you want to pronounce it. That is really a lot of negative energy in there. It's really weird. If you get a chance to investigate one, go ahead. Just be careful.
So what was interesting is, I've done several prisons, so like Brushy Mountain, that's a big known one. Brushy Mountain, actually the most active place. My 2 investigations I've done there was actually the dining area, the mess hall, whatever you want to call it. And at first I was like that, you would think it would be like solitaire or death row, but then I got to thinking about it. And the dining area, that's actually where they get to correspond and actually socialize. So
right.
It actually makes a little bit, it makes sense, once you think about it. So,
yes. Yeah.
So anyway, we're going to end it on there. So
okay.
Jack, just tell everybody what you got going on. Plug whatever you want to plug. Let them know how they can get a hold of you. I mean, obviously, I appreciate you being on the show. And,
I appreciate you having me, Ken.
So this is your 20 seconds of fame here. Just let everybody know.
20 seconds of fame. Well, if anybody wants to get a hold of me, you can get a hold of me through Facebook. Just look me up. Just look up Jack Kenna. You'll find me on there. I actually have 2 Facebook pages, but the one you want to really go to is it's JACKNY 46 at Facebook. So just look me up. You'll see me. You'll see the images of me when I was on one of the shows, Haunted Case Files. So look for that one. But you can reach me either one realistically. Message me there. You can also email me if you got any questions or if you got any stories you want to share, because I'm still collecting stories for the new show that my producer's putting out. You can email me at jackkenna.org@gmail.com. So it's just my full name, Jack Kenna .org@gmail.com. Just email me there. Right now, what I got going on is I'll be starting up my Paranormal 101 class next Thursday. I have an assistant teacher who's my case manager for my Rensselaer Paranormal Research team. Is Stacy Hawkins. She's actually next year going to be taking that class over and teaching it herself. I'll still be around, but I'll still be there with her. But she's actually going to start teaching it. So these can carry on after I can't do it anymore. Somebody's got to take over.
Exactly.
And then I'll still be teaching the Psychic Abilities course, which next year, or maybe possibly this fall, we'll also be offering it online. You won't have the investigation. You won't have the investigation portion, but you'll be able to do it online and follow it there. And take the course. So yeah, it's an interesting course, and it can be done. We're actually going to do a test this spring with the online thing. I got one person sitting in. I got one person who's going to sit in as a friend of mine. So I've got that going on. Yeah, I've got that going on. And again, if you just need to reach me, you can go to my website, jackkenna.org. Also, you can look up spiritsofnewengland.org. That's my main team that I'm part of. It's run by Ellen McNeil. but it's spiritsofnewengland.org. You can look us up there. If you need help with a haunting, you can contact us through that website too, spiritsofnewengland.org. We've got an online form you can fill out, contact us. That form is required before we take on any cases. That's pretty much it. I can't think of anything else right now.
All right. Well, this is what I got going on.
Oh, and you can find my books on Amazon. That's one last thing. You can find on Amazon.com.
This is what I got going on. I'm going to be at Smoky Mountain Terror from May 30th to June 1st. I'm excited about that. And then next week, my guest will be April Bussett from Ghost Magazine. So again, Jack, thanks for being on, and we will talk soon.
All right, thanks for having me, Kent. You have a good night. Thanks everybody for watching.